Now, my pleasure to introduce another frequent KM World speaker, and that's Tim Hill, Director of Product Management at NICE. He's going to talk about KM and GenAI Workflow. He leads a product management team and has launched generative search utilizing RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. I'm sure you all knew that. He built a customer data aggregation reporting platform that led to understanding of best practices, business unit awareness, and most commonly configured features, and more. Today, he's going to share how leading organizations are revolutionizing their knowledge management with GenAI Workflow and achieving measurable ROI. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Okay, so let's get after it here. We're going to talk about what we've been learning over the last 10 to 12 months as we've been implementing generative AI with our customer base. But before I do that, let me just tell you a little bit about who we are so you have some perspective and have a little bit of grounding in the presentation. So NICE is an AI company that has a number of products that support the customer experience journey. And we're here representing our CX1 Empower Expert system. This is our knowledge management system where our focus is on making knowledge retrieval and discovery effortless for the users that we serve. By way of giving you some perspective on the size of our platform, we serve around 600 million platform events every month. We serve up around 50 million page views, and as of last month, we had over 1 million generative searches, and that number is really growing on the platform. 3 primary user types that we serve. We serve the employees and the agents. That's largely in the call center through delivering real-time knowledge inside of a real-time interaction, whether that's digital or voice. We serve consumers largely through what used to be Google searches, what's now becoming LLM searches, Google AI Assistant, Perplexity, and so forth, ChatGPT, et cetera. And then many of you, I'm sure, who are here today, the knowledge architect, the knowledge manager, that's all about content creation, content permissioning, propagation, and ultimately deprecation. Some household names you see on the slide, these are some of our customers, and it's really a privilege to stand in front of you and say we have an opportunity to serve them. Okay, so with a little bit about us, let's get into the meat of the presentation. Back in the spring, we went to the AI event, the KM World AI event down in Arizona, and we presented our generative AI workflow, which, as I mentioned earlier, we've been working with our customers to implement over the last 10, 12 months. This is a four-step process that's really about continual update to content to power high-quality generative searches. And the first part of that is capture. That's all about getting content into a platform, our platform where you can use it. Cultivation is about determining what content is most important, how's it used, and whether or not it's adequate to address the questions that the users you serve have. Calibration is about using our editor to use AI inside of the editing experience. We have curated prompts that are used to help maximize the way content performs inside of these generative systems. And then finally, calibration, or what the industry calls evals. This is a way to measure your content as it relates to the way it performs over time. Okay, so with that, I'm going to just talk about what we've learned, and it's probably going to come as no surprise that search is changing. By show of hands, how many people have seen an AI overview of some sort in the last week? So that's most folks. Some of you apparently don't ever search. How many of you had some enjoyment with that experience? You found it useful? That's also quite a few people. So the evidence, just by show of hands here, is overwhelming that search is in fact changing, and users do prefer these generative responses. Now, as content creators, you may be thinking, well, okay, what does that actually mean? And we're going to tell you a number of things that it means, but at this point, it means that if you have public content and you're attempting to serve support-style use cases, you want to get that in as many channels as you can so that you can meet your consumers where they are, be it ChatGPT, be it Google AI Overview, Perplexity, et cetera. Now, we have taken a look at public content and private content, and we're going to talk about here what we're seeing as it relates to those. Now, public content, it probably comes as no surprise to you that page views are down. Year over year, they're down about 20%. And we find that industry materials that indicate that it takes about 6,000 LLM scrapes in order to get one page view. Now, this doesn't mean that content isn't being used, but it's being used differently. And predominantly, that's through these generative searches. We know this because we looked at several of our customers that have public content. We looked at the common questions that their users ask of them, and then we found those answers about 48% of the time inside of these generative responses. So again, this is emphasizing that users no longer prefer the point and click, the 10 blue links, traditional Google-style search. They're preferring these generative responses. They're more and more meaningful, and they're becoming somewhat transparent. Users don't actually know that's what they're doing when they're performing a search. All right, so let's talk about private content. There are similar consistencies here in user behavior. It's overwhelming that users do, in fact, prefer these generative responses. What's different is page views. We don't see page views declining with regards to private content. We also see that the source links, which you see on the screen, are clicked less than 1% of the time, which really emphasizes the idea of making sure that your content is of high quality and it's accurate and well-groomed. We think that this notion of higher page views with private content and less page views with public content is the difference between knowledge discovery. I'm a consumer, I have a problem, I know what I want, and knowledge retrieval. I'm an agent, I've seen this circumstance a number of times, I just need to get to the answer really fast so I can help a consumer. Page views with private content are also primarily coming from bookmarks or some sort of direct link that a user has saved. Now, we've taken a look at time to answer, and we understand time to answer because we study the user behaviors after a search has been executed. And we see that with generative search, users can arrive at answers about 4 times faster than traditional 10 blue links. So again, evidence that users prefer this kind of search activity over the traditional way of searching. We've also studied how frequently generative searches lead to answers. And we see, again, based on behaviors after a search is executed, that about 89% of the time a user arrives at an answer that they were actually looking for. So again, search is changing. And you might be thinking, all right, well, what should I do? And we would submit to you that search is in fact changing. At the primary purpose of websites or web pages is becoming to power generative searches. And the secondary purpose is to be a destination for humans. So humans are going to generative search, finding what they're looking for, and then they might check a link. They might check a link that you have, your web page. That's overwhelming. The evidence is showing that. So what can you do about it? We would submit to you what you want to do is determine that your content is ready. You want to ask yourself if your content is ready for the fact that users are changing the way that they search. Now, we have abstracted a number of capabilities inside of our product to make this easier. And when we talk about our generative AI workflow with regards to Cultivate, there's 2 things that we do here. Number 1 is we have a cornerstone content report, and this identifies how content's used inside of your generative or inside of our generative system that's powered with your content. And we tell you what content's used, how frequently it's used, how often it's been updated. If you have 50 pages that are powering the majority of your generative responses and they haven't been updated in 3 years, that might be a problem because that information may no longer be relevant. We also have a content adequacy capability. This is really helpful for new customers as they come onto the platform or existing customers who are introducing new product or services. And here we run a simulation where you can upload the questions that you have to determine if your content's adequate or not to address those. And that helps get your content ready and identify content gaps. By way of calibration, this is really using our editor and our AI capabilities to power maximizing the efficiencies of content editing. And I'm showing you an example here of what can be done. This is not an overwhelming endorsement of AI, and that's kind of the point. We're turning a table into bullets because bullets perform better in these AI systems. And I would suggest to you that this is not the most valuable use of a content creator's time, but it's a necessary function that we have to do. Also, here's an example of expand upon. This means that a content creator can use a model to derive, in this case, some industry examples of encryption. And this just means that it's faster to get the definition of these terms defined. Now, we still have to approve this and make sure it's correct in our use case, but what we see, and the point of these slides, are in our studies, we see time to edit shifting from about 60 to 68% on the positive side. So that means editing can be done faster on these lower value kinds of activities, which gives content creators time to do things of higher value. All right, so with regards to calculation, or what the industry calls evals, there's two things that we do. We measure faithfulness and relevancy. And faithfulness and relevancy are measures on a scale of 0 to 1. Less than 0.7 means that your content needs some degree of attention, or your system somewhere needs some degree of attention. Faithfulness is a measurement of how accurately the generated answer reflects the content in the knowledge base. Pretty important. Relevancy measures how close, or how well the generated answer reflects the question that was asked. Now, you see on the screen here, on the what's my left side, the red, and then on the right side you see the green. This is where we used what I talked about earlier with our editor curated prompts, our AI prompts, clear and concise. So here we're not really changing the substantial nature of this content. We're just cleaning it up a little bit to make it easier to read. And what this yielded was this content in the red was performing at about 0.5. After we took this action, we see content score at 0.7, 0.75. So we get a 20 to 25 point improvement in the way that content performs in the system by simply just cleaning it up a little bit. Okay, so to wrap up here, we just re-emphasize our generative AI workflow, 4-step process focused on a continual way to improve content. I'll leave you with 3 or 4 things to think about. Number one, as I suggested earlier, user preferences for content consumption are changing. And as content creators, you need to be mindful of that as you're creating content and going about your content, managing your content lifecycle. We would also encourage you to focus on maximizing how content performs in these AI systems. There are some nuances, but if you're looking for a general rule, think about how humans want to consume content. And if you're writing content that's good for humans, it's likely going to be good for AI. There's some other things that you may want to consider, but if you just take that away and nothing else, you'll be headed in a good direction. And then finally, the last item we would submit is you find measurement tools. We shared with you faithfulness and relevancy, but find measurement tools that you can use in your process to make the process for content improvement much more tangible. All right, well, thank you for coming to the session. Hopefully you'll stop by the booth and say hello. Thank you very much.